This is Cow, the podcast. Apologies if you come here looking for 7 acts of sickening violence involving puppies. Click here because not a single puppy has been abused, other than by my appropriation of the puppies' nouns, in order to create clickbait. And if you want to take offence at this, then please do, go all the way. I knew what I was doing, I knew the risk. Make the calls to Google to have me excommunicated, get me struck off Facebook, go on TV to never speak of me again, or even of my book launch. Make me famous. And see what I did there? Or you can listen up. You're listening to episode 13 of Cow, Can of Worms, the podcast. This episode, a personal journey through the world of AI, its development and its consequences, tracing the ethical issues facing those who recognise the dangers of having our primary communication system, that is the internet, in the hands of a sophisticated and manipulating monopoly. And looking at the problems faced by the likes of anyone required to try and make a living through this system. How does that work? Is it okay to be involved with this system? Is there any acceptable level of complicity? And if so, what is it? Just to put it out there, I've got a certain level of surprise that you've even seen this title and that you're listening to this, that the post hasn't been taken down or restricted for whatever reasons. There's more than a bit of irony in the fact that the algorithms responsible for a trend towards extremist content are also being put under pressure to censor it. But we'll come to that later. Firstly, a number of comments from last week. Thanks everyone for your time and thanks for listening. Of course, thanks for your support. And yes, I had a question which I thought I'd answer here, and it was what's next? Turns out that thinking about that brought up all sorts of issues and even spawned the above title. So here you go, enjoy. Behind the question is the fact that eventually I want to be able to support myself through this podcasting, this philosophizing, thinking malarkey or racket even. You can choose to call it what you like. I'm choosing my words carefully, of course. So the question, what's next, does bring out a can of worms, like how are you going to grow the business? So if you don't want to be involved in that, then how far will you go? Now, I guess there are a few out there who are thinking, this is a radio show, radio comes free, and that's all good, so it does. And you might be thinking, so what do you mean business? And that's all cool, but if you're familiar with the idea of the digital nomad, then you'll get it already, I guess, with this podcast, is the idea that you can get enough people to appreciate what you're doing, to support you with the price of a cup of coffee per month. And that way you can go on, produce your content, spread the word without the worry of working for the man. Just to support it. This is dream job time. Entrepreneurial, yeah, maybe. And high stakes holy grail version of it, but based on providing real value. This is the sort of thing you might see in an ad somewhere. It'll be a bloke or a girl on the beach telling you they can live anywhere in the world, do whatever they like, relaxing, and the money just keeps pouring in. Yeah, well, that's the ad rather than the reality, but that's the way it's portrayed. Tech savvy, self-employment, cheap to set up, and effortless once you've done so. But hopefully not without providing value. Now there's a struggle if, like me, you want to make a difference, want to be doing the right thing, if you want to have an ethical base to the way you fund your life or the way you live your life. And if you believe that the world is more than just that little bit broken, and you're one of these to put your money where your mouth is, to live by your word as it were, then you have to make some pretty hard decisions. You'll know this. Minimize your footprint, dump the possessions, leave the attachments that keep you trapped in the day-to-day humdrum. For what on the other side? Well, fulfillment. But a nomadic existence? Now, one man's ties are another man's freedoms, job security, family expectations, social liabilities even. You're making a sacrifice, and it seems a mad choice, a no-brainer maybe. The problem is, if like me you might be tempted to overthink things, then the ethical struggle doesn't really go away, whatever path you choose. This is about our complicity in the system. It's a question of whether we take part in the game And if we do, it's about judging whether you become part of the problem. How deeply can you go into the system before you become corrupted by it? Is it possible to become part of the solution whilst you're still contributing to the problem? It's the starving artist in the garret again, unable to take commissions for fear of destroying the purity of the art. It's about whether you can moan about the system and take from it at the same time. So where next is obviously increasing the audience, monetizing the work. It's selling out. Bloody socialists, go back to Russia. Oh, look, complaining about land ownership and living in a house. Oh, look, thinks we should look after the environment, but look, here's a photograph of a plastic carrier bag he only used once, only once. That's him there putting it in a bin. Go back to Russia, you communist. You and your red flag. We don't need you telling us what to do. Apologies if I got a bit Stuart Lee there. But it's not just that really, is it? There are far harder critics to be found in your own home, and usually no worse critic than yourself. Can I live with that kind of stuff? Because as soon as you begin to make an impact, that's going to be the charge. Hypocrisy. Classic propagandist tactic, used time and time again. But look, I'm not suffering any of this, none of that. Turns out that for me, being in charge of myself was key. It's the key to the existential key to everything, really. The key really to the only question. And I'm okay with the idea of what I'm doing, what I'm trying to achieve, and I'm okay with how much I choose to engage with this broken system, and I'm okay with myself. I trust that my own heart is in the right place, even if I don't get everything right. And yeah, I'd up and leave the UK, drive from London to New York around the coast of the Med, and yeah, and I'd fund it on the back of this veneer of social activism. But I believe there's some value to it. And that's no bad example of how we ought to be living and of what's possible for people. I can happily cling to the vague hope that this might be of interest to a fair number of interested people or patrons, that it's of some use and that I'm providing some value in return for fair exchange. The complicity with the system just starts to get a little bit deeper, a little bit more pronounced as things begin to develop. Now, here I am some few months in, early days and slow burning, some financial support coming in even, and the system begins to work, tan, and the question does come to mind. What next? How does one grow this kind of business? Well, my answer, first of all, is that this slow burn suits me pretty good. The work, the research takes time, and I'm developing my voice. That might get a little abstract, but by that I mean I'm developing the landscape of the podcast like a philosophical manifesto. And each time I feel it's getting better and making more sense. But it turns out, as I'm talking about things that come to me pretty much as they come to me, what you get on your side can sometimes sound pretty raw. Just saying, the more I think I do this, the more I think it's feeling better for me, feeling more of a whole, more structured, more complete. And that's what I mean by finding my voice. So next, the immediate next, is to consolidate this, content-wise. Pretty good achievement so far, but always it can get better, stronger, and the work, the content can develop. And once that's out of the way, when I'm feeling I'm nailing that with some value, then comes medium term next, and that's when the question of developing the business, inverted commas as some would have it, that's when that comes to mind, how to get it out there, how to develop and increase the audience. And that's the real struggle. That's when it comes ethically and morally. And why should that be a real struggle? The struggle is that to do it, you have to, it seems, get on board with Google and YouTube. Use the same formulaic tactics that they do. Netflix, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, they all use this. And Google, to put it simply, to find the right audience. Maybe you can do that with a bit of public speaking and a book, drawing an audience in that way. But mainly, it's going to be using exactly the kind of tactics that I keep shouting out, keep telling people to be aware of. It's mind control. Hey, get back to Russia, you commie, you Russian conspiracy person. We don't need you coming to us, warning us about the dangers of our phones. We love them. We saw you. We took a picture of you and you bought some bread with money. Get out, get out. That's the revolution for you. Hey, look, podcasting did seem pretty cutting edge even as much as a year ago, but it's taken on the same characteristics as the rest of the web here. It's become the latest mainstream. What with the BBC getting into it and Google themselves getting involved, you got footballers, pop stars, actors, all kinds of celebrity getting involved. It was mainly, back in the day, an iTunes thing, a little bit nerdy, a little bit left field. Only last year, I think it was last year, Google began to get involved. Hadn't even recognized it as a thing before then. Now it's got its own category. You can register your podcast now with Google Play, but only in the US. You can't even do it from the UK. If you want to, you can hack it and use a VPN, which is very easy, but I'm not going to go into that. For now, it's US only for Google Play. It's that new. Then, of course, you have a myriad of Android apps to choose from, and the website. Carolthepodcast.online is mine, for example. But now the BBC are getting on board. In the last year, BBC have hit podcasting pretty hard, become pretty mainstream. I'm just saying that now the podcasting world is less Wild Wild West and more Eric and Ernie, less Mr. Robot, more Robbie the Robot, and we sort of have AI to blame for this, which means we have ourselves to blame for this because it's us asked AI to make things easier for us. So if you're going to be calling out this dangerous AI manipulation, why embrace the world? Well, because that's the way of it. Okay, so I'm drawn to slow radio, slow burn, slow growth, etc., and sustainability. But against the likes of Google and Facebook and YouTube, there is a battle for our attention, for your attention. And this is a weird space where not only are they in the battle, but they're drawing the battle lines, writing the rules, and controlling access to who's playing the game. And where's this come from? It used to be that searching Google for stuff could be hard work. So many results to choose from, so much to sift through, and no way to know what sources we could trust, as the recent narrative goes. Now, in those days, I always used to treat the internet a bit like walking down a new high street. If someone came up and offered me some deal that was too good to be true, yeah, guess what? And it was the same thing with eBay and with YouTube and other platforms, I guess. But for me, eBay, I saw it first through eBay because I was quite strongly involved in that in the early days. In the beginning, eBay was a pretty simple platform for enthusiasts like the Wild West. It was more about the bid and the winning, and just nipping in to snipe an auction at the right moment, judging how long it would take to hit the eBay servers with your last bid, and placing it at the last millisecond. It was a buzz. It was more about that than it was about capturing the cheapest deal. As far as the cheapest deal, we always get the cheapest deal anyway, the best deal. Do you know anyone who spent 3 hours choosing a new phone contract comes out the shop saying they've been ripped off? But back to eBay, there were loyal followers who'd spend their days tracking items, just like Man the Hunter, and there were sellers, businesses formed out of it, pioneers, new enterprises, vibrant and thriving. Same thing with YouTube. Content creators just following their bliss, for want of a better phrase, and getting picked up by interested parties. Millions of followers had found them pretty much by word of mouth, trawling through the dodgy search results, page by page. Hard work, we thought. At that time, web designers made sites sticky to provide value and to hold your attention. There was a drive for quality content shared by the pioneers, content creators, sellers. Content was king. Now a Google search or a YouTube search, what does it give you? 10 results on the first page, and then you have hard work to try and find any more. Now, Google, back in the day, had become the #1 search engine, worth millions and millions. Just in case you don't remember, ask Jeeves or Alta Vista. There were others, but Google came to dominate. And at the time, the chief executive had come out with a mission statement promising user quality, I guess. When he said that, Google's mission was to get people off to a new page as quickly as possible. Totally against the run of the mainstream at the time, but brilliant, flipping all of the metrics on their heads. Users wanted convenience, to be shown the best option as quick as possible. That's us asking AI to do the job. And all of a sudden, terms like relevance and trust and price and postage and postcode and many other factors began to make sense. Enter AI. Enter the algorithm designed to take all of those factors and make sense of them for you. To take all of those factors away from you in the name of convenience. And these algorithms evolved. And the platforms evolved. What I think was a surprise then was how the content evolved. We had a feedback loop where the users started to compete for the top spot, of course. This was survival of the fittest. This meant competing to be closest to the algorithm's notion of best match for a search. Nothing really sinister here. Remember, we've asked them to do this until we realised that we now have everybody on the platform aiming to produce the same thing. Essentially defining a single set of rules for fitness promoted convergent evolution. Everyone competes for the same title, the same quality of picture, the same bare bones description, with nothing irrelevant. It's like a peak, everyone aiming to get to the same peak. And you may be fit enough to reach that peak, but in convergent evolution, so are others. In evolutionary biology, convergent evolution is the process whereby organisms not closely related independently evolve similar traits, like eyes, as a result of having to adapt to similar environments or ecological niches. Eyes are an example. In an octopus and in the eyes of a human, we're related only through organisms that way back had no eyes. That's where we branched off. The eyes developed separately. Our eyes are actually different. They're differently structured. But they're both a result of maximum fitness for environment. We don't compete between us. We compete within our own niches, and eyes make sense for both. What this means for us in the world of communications is that because our environment is defined by only a few players, we're all converging on a single point. One viral video, in fact, looks very much like any other viral video, and diversity suffers. For an example, let's get back to eBay and use an eBay listing or a YouTube video or a web page for Google, which gains dominance. It won't be shifted unless something within the content changes, and by that I mean a slip in postage delivery rate. Content now bears little relation to relevance. If there is a slip, it will be replaced with its nearest clone, creating a beige world. One way to think of this is in terms of the sat-nav and the salmon. If the salmon returns to its birthplace to breed, then how come the breeding grounds are so widely distributed? Maybe they got lost? But for us, now it's sat-nav. Sat-nav is available, we need never get lost. The downside is it leaves us breeding only in one stream. And there are thousands of other beautiful streams out there we should be exploring. This is how eBay evolved, how YouTube evolved, and how Google and many other platforms have evolved, and how we're evolving to fit to them. We're evolving to work for AI. The latest development in this story has been in social media, designed specifically to make the most of our basest instincts. Now, this is real. It's been designed to hijack our minds by creating an addictive bond to our smartphones, designed to sit in your hand, to demand your attention, occupy your thoughts, and create new habits on purpose. This is how deep it's gone. As I'm writing this, I have my phone next to me, flashing away every now and then. And Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, whatever the new one is, all fully aware of this battle. As I mentioned earlier, this battle for attention. The more attention they can command, the more value they demand. Again, the same pressure to hit the top spot, but now the pressure is to do it again and again and again, and a greater demand for the next sensation. YouTube, Facebook, Netflix want to keep their viewer hooked. So along comes the recommended for you video sidebar. This is the kicker. AI realizes that to keep you hooked, it just needs to put something a little more juicy up there. And something more juicy for a human viewer, it seems, turns out to be something more extreme. This is deep down in our lizard brain. Of course, we're not looking at any kind of facts check going on here, and we're not looking at what will likely benefit society, and we're not judging the quality of the argument or the beauty of the writing. There's no social engineering involved because that's not what gets people addicted. YouTube, Facebook, etc., whoever it is for you, they take everything they know about you, and people with similar behavior, people who've searched similar phrases, watched similar videos, bought similar products, and feed it back to you in the form of the next recommendation, slightly more engaging and more likely to keep you hooked. The beauty for them is they don't need to know everything about you to do it. Not everything. They just need to know you better than you know yourself. This is key to how we develop a defense against being so manipulated. But the effect on our culture for now is that it's creating a demand for sensationalism, and this is something that we're all becoming part of. And as I pointed out, attempts to keep all of the salmon in the same mainstream is a very dangerous place to be, because we need the explorers, we need the chance, and we need the mistakes. My point, I guess, is that what I'm trying to do is to reach an audience of like-minded supporters who are savvy to this, who understand how the game is played and understand how we are forced to play it. And what it means in practice is that whilst I would prefer to keep my content slow burn, sustainable, non-sensationalist, expect to see some shorter posts, some more sensationalist titles or content. It's the only way left. I mean, I could, for example, congratulate Liam Neeson on coming clean over his taboo thoughts recently, which I do. He, if you don't know, admitted that he'd been subconsciously racist and violently so. But he made clear that he'd consciously overcome the problem. This is what we as humans do. It's how we function. It's a simple explanation of the battle we all have between our subconscious monkey brain and our will. We are, in essence, all built on racist, heuristic go-tos. It's our conscious brains which allow us to override it. It doesn't matter why. That's what we're here to do. And this is the whole point about how we can join a new conversation if we're able to manage our baser feelings, our lizard brain. And a great example of how encouraging sensationalism is dangerous. Encouraging sensationalism encourages the knee-jerk reaction. It depends upon it and our addiction to it. It deflects us from being able to debate effectively. We're not interested in resolution or fact. We just need a bigger hit. The example here for Liam Neeson is to look at the reaction he provoked. This is a man being open about his feelings. A man raised on the Troubles in Ireland. This is a man who has the right to talk about trauma, who was raised on violence and terror, and he'd survived all that. Nearly destroyed by his own confession, nearly broken by the media and by our need for excited sensationalism. Thankfully, he got away with it, because it looked for a while like he would never work again. And as we all know, he has a particular set of skills. So what I'm saying is unless I can find a way around this, end up exploiting the same stuff. So you'd have to expect the following titles, like Julian Assange, War Criminal, How Racism Will Save the Planet, Top 10 Reasons Women Are in the Forefront of the Demand for War, Trump Blunder Reveals Russian Puppet Master, The Secret Sins of Jordan Peterson, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, brackets 29, revealed. And of course, the title that I've chosen for today, 7 Acts of Sickening Violence Involving Puppies, click here. If you've got any of those, let me know. Any help much appreciated. But as I say, slow burn works for me. And I've got to try and keep that balance. If you can like and share and review the podcast, that's the greatest help. Or you can check out how to support the show with a donation or a monthly subscription through PayPal at cowthepodcast.online support. Thank you for listening. I've been Ant Biggs, and this has been Cow the Podcast. Sign up, or the puppy gets it.